All right. We're just pretty much going to do the heart for this chapter. And I'm going to want you to know how the blood flows through the heart. So that's just kind of a heads up about what I'm going to ask from this chapter. So there is an exchange between your lungs and your cells. I could say cells or I could say tissues, right? Tissues are just groups of cells. So sometimes I might use the word tissues. So there's an exchange between lungs and tissues, right? And so there's actually two types of blood in your body as well that carry. So one type of blood carries a lot of oxygen. One type of blood doesn't carry so much oxygen. So we call it oxygenated blood and deoxygenated blood. Another way to put it, a more accurate way to put it, perhaps, is oxygen-rich blood and oxygen-poor blood. So in my arm, for example, I've got two different types of blood vessels that are carrying two different types of blood, or blood in two different states, right? So I've got blood coming down, like from my heart, coming down my arm and feeding all the cells in my arm with oxygen. And then I've got another set of blood vessels, veins, coming back up my arm. So I've got blood vessels going that way, I've got blood vessels going that way. So it's like two one-way roads. And so there's an exchange between your lungs and your body, and your heart is what is mediating this. The heart is pumping the blood for that exchange. So it's still an exchange between the lungs and all of your tissues. So the lungs is where you get the oxygen, and deliver that to the cells. And then the cells take in the oxygen and they put out carbon dioxide. That's going to go back to the lungs again. And then the lungs are going to get that carbon dioxide, swap it out for oxygen, back to the cells. Back to the cells, then back to the lungs. And then take oxygen back to the cells, take carbon dioxide back to the lungs. It just keeps going like that. It's just that the heart is mediating this. It's in the middle. It's pumping it. And the heart is saying, look, hey, lungs, if you want to give the cells oxygenated blood, okay, give it to me and I will give it to the cells. And then when the cells finished all that oxygen and now it's all full of carbon dioxide, the heart says, give me that blood. I will give it to the lungs and swap it out for oxygenated blood. So we've got two types of blood that are carried in two different vessels, right? They seldomly go through the same vessel. This is kind of an analogy I was talking about in class one time. These blue rectangle box things represent houses, like cells. So these are cells. These are like houses in this thing. This small street is a residential street, which is a capillary. Then there's like streets that are a little bit bigger. And see all these red dots? Those are like red blood cells that have a lot of oxygen, right? So when the blood leaves your heart, it goes through these arteries, which are like, to me, they're like interstates, right? So it holds lots of lanes of traffic, things like that, right? So it's like an interstate. And then you get onto a smaller road, like Claiborne or something like that, Paris Road, that would be like an arterial. And you see there's like fewer like blood cells thick. And then finally you go onto a residential street, which is like the capillary, and a lot of these capillaries can only hold one blood cell. Hold on one second. So they can only hold one blood cell. And then there's oxygen in this red blood cell, and the oxygen is going to jump out and go into the house. So the red blood cell is like a car, and the oxygen is like people, and it jumps out and it gets into the it gets into the house, the cell, right? And in that cell is carbon dioxide. So while oxygen is going into the cell, carbon dioxide is leaving and going back into the blood cell. So you've got like oxygen going into the house, and you got carbon dioxide leaving the house at the same time, and they pass each other in like the front yard. Right? So as oxygen gets out of the car and heads into the house, carbon dioxide is leaving the house and going into the car. So these little circles are cells, blood cells that, and so then you see here, like I've made it kind of purple and then I made it blue. And so this is to show that like by the time this blood is blue, it doesn't have a lot of oxygen in it. It has a lot of carbon dioxide. These cells here have a lot of oxygen. As they pass the cells, the oxygen goes to the cells. And then they become rich in carbon dioxide instead. Because that's what cells are doing. So, I mean, we're breathing in carbon. We're breathing in oxygen. We're breathing out carbon dioxide, right? That's actually what our cells are doing. They're breathing in oxygen and breathing out carbon dioxide. Our lungs are just a way, it's the cells that are really doing the breathing. We're just trying to get it to them, right? So this is what you're seeing, like this, these cells, these blue rectangle things, these cells are taking in the oxygen and they're putting out carbon dioxide. So it's going to go from red to blue. So this is where, like, this is oxygenated blood here, and then this is deoxygenated blood here, where I've got this word vein. So like an artery goes down my arm and feeds my arm with oxygen, and then a vein is coming back up with carbon dioxide. That carbon dioxide is headed to my lungs, and when it gets to my lungs, I'm going to breathe it out. Then I'm going to breathe in more oxygen. Oxygen's going to go into an artery, arterial, capillaries, and go to all the cells in my arm. Let me let somebody in. So I hope that makes sense. So the heart is the one pumping this. So this artery came from the heart. This vein is going to go back to the heart, right? I have a vein, like I have an artery here in my heart. It comes around my shoulder and it's going down to my arm. I have a vein coming up my arm the other direction, and it's going around my shoulder and into my heart. Anyone have any questions on like that idea? This is what it looks like, right? So this is all the arteries. Like I was doing the example of the arm, right? There's an artery that goes around the shoulder, and then it comes down into the arm, and it's all of this is oxygenated blood in these blood vessels. All right, so these blood vessels are feeding the arm, right? And then on the next slide, these are the veins going back. Now all this blood is headed toward the heart. All this blood is headed away from the heart. That's the direction all these blood vessels are going. Oops, sorry. These blood vessels are all going toward the heart. And if you follow all of them, they all lead into like one of these two big blood vessels, and they're both going into the heart. Same thing here. If you look at this, all these, like you see these all these arteries here, like they're all coming from this arch, like this big red arch, or they're coming from this long one that's coming from the heart. So like, here's the heart. And so, everything's branching off of this thing or this thing. Does anyone want me to go back over any of those ideas? Here's a cutaway of a heart. So the front side of the heart has been cut off. So we call this a coronal or a frontal section, right? There's different kinds of sections. If I were to section like a body down the middle into two halves, that would be called like a sagittal, right? Or I could cut it this way and have like a top and a bottom. We call that like a transverse cut. Or from the side, you can cut it like that. That would make like a front side and a back side. We call that like a frontal or a coronal cut. So this is a coronal cut. It's the front part of the heart has been cut off so that you can look inside. And the first thing about the heart is that you have to imagine the heart as being two sides, like two different. They don't mix their blood. So it's like one building, but with like two businesses. You know, one side deals with just oxygenated blood, and the other side just deals with deoxygenated blood. Or I'm using the words here, oxygen rich. So oxygenated blood is like oxygen rich blood. Deoxygenated blood, oxygen poor. So you got one building that is split in half, and they don't even hang out for lunch together, right? They both deal with blood, but they do different jobs. So the left side is dealing with oxygen rich blood, and notice how the left and the right are kind of like reversed, right? Because when you look at something, the anatomical position, it's like as if it's facing you. So that is this person's left atrium, right? It might be to your right side, but it's their left atrium. So left's on this side and the right is on this side. So you've got a left side of the heart and you've got a right side of the heart. The right side always deals with deoxygenated blood or oxygen poor blood. This is after you're born, right? When you're a fetus, it's a little bit different, right? We're talking about after you're born, right? So the left side of the heart always deals with oxygenated blood. They don't mix blood. There is no back and forth between the left and the right. So if it comes in the left side, it's going to leave the left side. It's going to come in the right side, it's going to leave the right side. And so we can see some of the places where this blood comes in and where it goes out. It looks it takes some getting used to because it's not like straight. They're kind of going and bending behind this and going behind this and up this way. So it's a little confusing, but let's start with the right side. So with the right side, it's kind of easy. You can see the two big tubes going in. So we call these the vena cava. It's like a huge vein. All the veins become the vena cava. So let me go back. All these veins are going into two places. You see this one right here where my pointer is? That's the vena cava, superior vena cava. And then there's a longer one down here. That's called inferior vena cava. So superior, inferior, above, below, right? So inferior vena cava, superior vena cava, both of these are going into the heart. That's right here. Inferior vena cava, superior vena cava. So all the veins that are above your heart, like from your neck, from your arms, your head, those are all going to converge into your superior vena cava and then go into your heart. All the veins from below your heart, your abdomen, your legs, that all goes into the inferior vena cava. So you're seeing two places here where blood enters the heart. So we're kind of on this blue side here, on this right side. So the blood's entering here, and then it's going to exit. It exits through here. This is kind of purple. Might have been better if they drew it blue, but I mean, same idea, right? It's exiting here. So we call this a pulmonary trunk, like right where my pointer is. But that's where the blood comes into the left side. This is where the blood exits the left side. Right side's a little more difficult to kind of vision, but the blood's coming in through these pulmonary, what we call pulmonary veins. Okay, so let me stop here for a second. These are arteries. These are veins. There's exceptions to this, though. An artery and a vein is not the color or not what kind of blood is in it. An artery is anything going away from the heart, and a vein is anything going toward the heart. So if we're talking about like my arm, yeah, the artery is red, it's carrying the oxygenated blood, and the veins coming back up and carrying the deoxygenated blood, right? But here, these little blue ones here that are around the lungs, like these up here are inside the lungs. Those are actually arteries, even though they're blue. So all of these on here, on this picture, these are all veins, except the ones by the lungs. So the lungs are arteries. So when you get to your lungs, you got to reverse the name. And that's because it's the type of blood. So you look at this blood right here, superior vena cava, inferior vena cava, it's deoxygenated. It's just coming back from our body. What this side of the heart needs to do, if this blood has no oxygen in it, we need to send it out to the lungs to get oxygen. That's what you got to do. You got a bunch of blood. It doesn't have any oxygen. Let's ship it out to the lungs, and we'll let the lungs give it oxygen, and then we'll get it back. So here it is. We're shipping it out. So we call this a pulmonary artery because it's going away from the heart. We're shipping it out to the lungs to get oxygen. When it comes back, it happens to be oxygenated. So it's kind of different here because the destination of this blood's a little different. This blood's not going to our cells or tissues. This blood's going to our lungs. So
Wait, so you said the pulmonary artery is going away from the heart?
It is. It's headed out to your lungs. We need to get that blood to your lungs so that all the carbon dioxide in that blood can go into your lungs and you can breathe it out. And of course, when you take your breath in, we want the oxygen to go back into that same blood. So we're just swapping out carbon dioxide for oxygen. So when that blood comes back to the heart, we call it a pulmonary vein. So you can see this arrow going out, that's going out to the lung. And then these two arrows here are coming back. That's from the lungs. Same thing on this side. See that arrow here? It's going out to the lung. And then these two are coming back from the lungs. And if you follow this purple one, let's follow this purple one. The blood left from the left side of the heart. I'm sorry, it didn't. It left from the right side of the heart. Right? This is the right side of the heart. It only deals with oxygen poor or deoxygenated blood. So it left. It's deoxygenated. Where's it going? You see how it splits here? It's going to your lungs. So it's deoxygenated. Now, here it is at the lungs, and it's coming back from the lungs. Now it's oxygenated. So since it's a different type of blood, you can't go to the right side. You got to go to the left side. So it comes in to the left side. I'll come back to that. Let me first, we've got a left and a right side, right? So the right side of the heart deals with oxygen poor or deoxygenated blood. The left side deals with oxygenated blood. We can also look at the chambers, right? So a chamber is like a room, right? So we got 4 rooms. Our heart is a 4-chambered heart. There's 2 atrium, or atria for plural, and there's 2 ventricles. So I've sort of divided it as best I could. So the 2 atrium, their only job is to receive blood. So if we're talking about like a building where you've got like 2 sides of the building and each side does a different job, each side has a receiving department. That's all they do is receive packages and stuff, right? And then each side also has a shipping department. That's all they do. They take the packages and they load it on the truck to be shipped out. The atria, those are the receiving, that's the receiving department. Ventricles, the shipping department. So the only thing the atria do is receive the blood. Then the atria are gonna pass that blood off to the ventricle, and the ventricles are gonna pump it out, send it out to wherever it needs to go. Actually, we could figure out where, we could kind of determine where it needs to go now. If we look at the right ventricle, I'll back it up. This is like the right ventricle right here. It's sending blood out. And where is this blood going? Well, you could look at this name, pulmonary, so that will give us a clue. This blood's going to the lungs. So the right side is sending blood out to the lungs. Because, you need to get oxygen in it. The left side, if you follow this big red tube, this is called the aorta. This goes everywhere. This goes to this aorta right here. See this, like this red arch thing? That's this arch right here. So if you see this arch, it's going everywhere. It like arches here and it drops behind the heart. You can't really see it right here. It drops behind, but there it is again. This is the aorta. This is the aorta here. Aorta, it curves up, it drops behind the heart, and then there's the aorta again. So it's going to give blood to all the parts of your body. So it's going to the whole body. And you see these 3 things right here, like 1, 2, 3. That's these 3 things. 1, 2. Right. So these 3 things are going up to your head and around your shoulders to your arms. And then you see this aorta, it comes up, it's dropping down behind the heart. You can't see it here, but there it is, it pops out down here. So that's going everywhere but your lungs. Going to your brain, your hands, your feet, liver, wherever. It's going to your body's systems. Whereas the other one, the right side, that's going to your body's lungs, the pulmonary. So one's going to like your system, one's going to like the pulmonary. So we got like these 2 different types of circulation, actually. One's called systemic circulation. One's called pulmonary circulation. Pulmonary is right here. Leaves the heart to go to the lungs and then back from the lungs into the heart again. That's pulmonary circulation. Leaving the heart, go to the lungs, back to the heart. That's pulmonary circulation. Systemic is leaving your heart, going to your systems everywhere else in your body, and then coming back to the heart again. Do you have any questions on that so far?
Yes, you said that the blood when it goes through the pulmonary vein, is that oxygen, like when it goes from the pulmonary vein to the lungs, that's oxygen rich blood, and when it comes back to the heart, it comes back oxygen poor?
No, it's the opposite.
Opposite. Okay.
So even though this is an artery, this is oxygen poor blood. And it's coming back as oxygen rich.
Okay.
So the vein, this is the only exception. The vein here, you don't imagine the vein as being blue or like not having a lot of oxygen. The opposite. In this case, the vein has all the oxygen and the artery doesn't. This is reversed from like the rest of the body.
Okay.
Because really, again, like an artery is anything that's leaving the heart, and a vein is anything that's coming toward the heart.
So the blood is always, I forgot the statement that you said with the blood just now.
Oxygenated and deoxygenated?
Mm-hmm.
It's occurring in like one of those two states. I don't know, that probably didn't answer that's probably not what you're getting at. So at any one time, there's blood coming in to the heart from two different places. So you're looking at the heart as like a whole building, right? But remember that building has two separate businesses on both sides. It's like a duplex or something, right? So you got to look at it like that. At any time, there's trucks on both sides dropping off stuff to the receiving department. And then if you go around like the back side of the building, at any time, there's two trucks back there. There's like two UPS trucks. They're picking up stuff to ship off. So the heart's shipping blood out and the heart's receiving at the same time. So there's always trucks at the receiving department on the loading ramp, and there's always trucks at the shipping department. But even though it's one building, the two businesses, they got different jobs. One only deals with the oxygenated blood, and one only deals with deoxygenated.
Okay, just one more time so that way I'm clear. You said the pulmonary vein sends deoxygenated blood to the lungs, and the lungs send oxygenated blood back to the heart in the sorry. Yeah, is that through the same vein?
Pulmonary vein. So out through this artery, you can see
that. Got it.
Through the vein.
Thank you.
I'm hoping on my video that I labeled it as well, like saying this is going out to the, out to the body, and this is coming back, or out to the lungs, this is coming back from the lungs. Yeah. So right now, you've got blood entering your heart right now from two different places. On one side, you've got blood coming back from your lungs, and on the other side, you've got blood coming from your whole body. And they're both like pouring into the heart. All right, so we've got these, there. That's, I kind of labeled it here. Yeah, okay. So here, this is pulmonary circulation, this is deoxygenated blood. Here it comes from the cells, and I've labeled it in yellow. And then here it's going to the lungs. We got to send that blood out to get some oxygen. And then the next slide is going to show what happens next. This is oxygenated blood, all these four arrows up here coming from the lungs. And here, this is oxygenated blood getting pumped out. So this would be like the receiving department and the shipping department of the left side. This is the receiving department and shipping department of the right side. So we're receiving blood here, and we're shipping out blood here. All of this blood's deoxygenated. That's the receiving and the shipping department of the left side. This is all oxygenated. Okay, so I want you to look at something else. We've got these 4 chambers, right atrium, left atrium, that's number 2. Number 3, right ventricle, 4, left ventricle. We've got 4 different rooms. It's kind of hard to make out that they're rooms, right? But these are 4 different areas, 4 different chambers. Okay, between the atrium and the ventricle, you can see this valve right here. And there's another one right here. Between the atrium and the ventricle, between each, there's a valve. They're like one-way doors. So the atrium, like the blood's going to go into the ventricle, the door opens like that, but it won't open the other way. It just opens like that and then it stops. It can't open the other way. It's like a one-way. It's like a double door, but it's like one way. It won't swing back into the other room again. That's what all these valves, you see there's 4 valves here. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 valves and they're all they're sort of lined up here. They all do the same thing. That door swings out and then it doesn't go back into the room again. It's like the door between our classroom and the hallway, right? That door opens up into our classroom, but you can't swing it back open into the hallway. So it's a one-way door. That's what our valves are. Most valves in our body work like this, right? And so it's to prevent backflow. So once the blood leaves the atrium and goes into the ventricle, it's not going back into the atrium again. You can't go back. Once you pass through that door, you're in that other room. Once you enter the class, you're stuck. And you guys know that from experience, right? You're not going anywhere. You have to sit there and listen to me. Go through that door. You're in the room. So look at the ventricle here. If you're in this room, you can't go through this door because that door opens into the room. But if you look at this door, that door opens out. So you can always go back through, you can go through that door. You can't go through the same door you came, but you can go through that door. So that's how the valves are working. It's forcing the blood to keep going. You don't want it going back. So we've got 2 valves here in between the atrium and the ventricle. So there's one here, there's one there. We call these AV valves, right? A for atrium, V for ventricle. So that's an AV valve, that's an AV valve. But if I want to be more specific, and I want to talk about just this valve here on the right side, I'm going to call it tricuspid valve. The one on the left side, I've got it labeled here mitral valve. Although you might see the word bicuspid, that's fine as well, right? But I think the more common word is really mitral valve. So you've got your tricuspid valve and you got your mitral valve. Both of those valves are keeping blood from going back into the atrium. Once it goes in the ventricle, it stays, that's it. And now we've got these 2 other valves. And the names are not too difficult because they're kind of named after the vessels that they go in, right? So we know we call this one aorta. So this valve's the aortic valve. So once the blood leaves the heart and goes into the first blood vessel, you don't want that blood going back into the heart again. So if that blood does try to go back into the heart, it shuts the valve. Right? So the blood leaves through and the valves, like the gates open. If that blood tries to go flow back in, it shuts it. And then on this other side, we call this a pulmonary valve because of it's going to the lungs, right? Once that blood goes through this pulmonary valve, that's it. You're going to go into the pulmonary artery. Like, you're committed. The blood cannot go back in to the heart again. Once the blood leaves the heart, once the blood leaves a ventricle, it leaves. When that package leaves the shipping department, the UPS driver can't bring it back inside again. That's it. You got to load it on the truck. It's a done deal. That's how the heart works. And those valves are what keep. We call these two valves, well, actually, you don't have to know this, but they're called semilunar valves. But pulmonary valve is on one side. Aortic valve is on the other side. So now we've got like an order that blood flows through. And I'll just go through it with you on this, and then I'm going to go to another slide and like make a new slide, and I'll type some stuff in. Because it's a lot. It's a lot on for one day, right? And I'm only going to go till 10, and we're like already at 9:40. So I want to be able to give you the question. All right, so you can start anywhere because it's a circle, but we're going to start in the right atrium because that's where most books and videos start at. So we're going to start with the right atrium. The blood's going to go through this valve through this tricuspid valve and into the right ventricle. The right ventricle is going to get it, and it's going to push it out through this pulmonary valve into the pulmonary arteries. See, there's one here and there's one here. Those pulmonary arteries are on their way to your lungs. But your heart's here and your lungs are right next door. So out to the pulmonary arteries, then the blood comes back into the pulmonary veins. See, there's two on the right side and there's two on the left side. All four of these veins are going into this atrium. You can see the hole here, right? These two are coming in through here. These two, it's hidden, but these two are coming into here as well. So pulmonary veins into the left atrium. The left atrium then the blood's going to go through the mitral valve into the left ventricle. Now the left ventricle needs to ship that blood out. So there you go, through the aortic valve. And you see it's like you just follow it, it's going into the aorta. From the aorta, that's going to become all your arteries. All your systemic arteries. Your carotid arteries in your neck and your brachial artery, your femoral artery, whatever. It becomes all the arteries. Right? So that's going out to all the arteries. The aorta becomes all the arteries. Then the veins are on their way back now. So all the veins converge into either the inferior vena cava or the superior vena cava. And then we're back at the right atrium. I went over that fast. I'm going to make a new slide right now while it's recording, and I'm going to write it out. So, stop, insert, new slide. Can I write on this? Wait, I got to change the type of slide. No. Help me out, guys. Do you see the place? I can make a text box. No, wait. All right. There's lots of videos on this, though. I mean, as well. You could just type in path of blood flow, and you can watch some other videos on this. So we're going to start with the right atrium. From there, it goes through a valve. A tricuspid valve. into the right ventricle. Whenever you leave a room, you have to go through a door. Whenever you leave a chamber, you have to go through a valve. There is something called the pulmonary trunk. I'm not putting it on. I'm just going to put the pulmonary artery. Then it's all in caps. It's going to the lungs. After it comes back from the lungs, now the blood's a different type of blood. It's not deoxygenated, it's oxygenated. And it's going to go through the pulmonary veins. Those pulmonary veins are going to go back into the heart now. So now we're on the other side. We're in the left atrium.
Wait, Mr. Close. So it's kind of like an in and out system, right?
The hamburger place?
Huh?
The hamburger place?
No.
What's the in and out system?
Like the way you're explaining how the blood flows.
I have it flowing into one side and then out that side, and then it flows into the opposite side and then out the opposite side.
So that's what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
the blood flows through the right, how you say it? Atrium, and then it flows out there and goes into the tripid valve.
Right. But just know in your head that this is happening on both sides at the same time. Like there's
No, I get it. I just wanted to figure out like just how the system is flowing so that help me to study versus like say if I just read it, I'm gonna read like a list. So that's why I'm asking like, how does it flow? Like it, goes in, then it goes out, it goes in, it goes out on one side.
Now I'm continuing up here. I gotta go to another valve, aortic valve. Then it goes into, from here, I'm gonna put the aorta, and I'm gonna put arteries. I'm skipping like arterioles and capillaries and all that. I'm just saying it goes out through arteries and then back through veins. Now I'm back to the right atrium again. So I'm back here again, right? So it's kind of like a cycle. It leaves through arteries and it comes back through veins. I've got that twice. Oh, you know what? I missed something here that I wanted to put. Oh, that's gonna throw off the whole thing. Hold on. Hold on, I can fix this. Shut up. Okay, here's my mistake. I don't need that. That's going to be I want to add something in here, so hold on. Here. There we go. Okay. All right. So out through the arteries, it goes to all the cells in your body, back into the veins. That's the left side. The right side over here is out through the pulmonary artery to the lungs and back to the pulmonary veins. Right? We got this word arteries and veins, but these are pulmonary arteries and pulmonary veins. That's feeding the lungs. This side where I'm kind of circling is feeding the lungs with deoxygenated blood. And you're swapping it out for oxygenated blood. This one's the opposite. You're feeding the cells with oxygenated blood. You're swapping it out for deoxygenated blood. So actually, see the lungs and the cells? Lung cells, lung cells. And then we go back to the very first slide. Lung cells. All I'm doing here is I'm adding in all the details, but it's the same idea. The lungs get the blood without oxygen, and they oxygenate it. And then the lungs send that blood to the cells. The cells are going to take all the oxygen out and put carbon dioxide in and send it back to the lungs. So here on the last slide, it's the same thing. We just filled in all the details. You know, where does it go exactly when it comes back from the lungs? You know, it's going back to the heart. Like what parts of the heart? So I'm going to ask you about this. Yeah, I know you're going to want to just put it on there and memorize it, but there's really only 2 days of class left, so I'm not going to stop you, but I would like you to try to understand what's going on. Like, what's the heart doing? What's the purpose of it? You know, where is it pushing this blood around? Okay. So you've got this question. You have the questions that I gave you last class at the end of that recording. All right, so this is only one question. So there's no secret about what I'm going to ask. All right, I only have one question to pick here. The questions that I gave you from the digestive system. So there were a few, right? There were probably like 5 or something. That's going to take a little more work. And then the questions from the one on animal tissues, you know, the epithelial. So
I don't think you gave us questions for those things.
I didn't, and I could talk about that now, actually. I'm going to put it in the chat box. So let me switch. Let me stop sharing. And let me find my chat box. Okay. First question. I want you to know what epithelial tissue is for. Same thing for connective. Then types of muscle, 3 types of muscle. So I want you to know which one is voluntary, which ones are voluntary, and which one is which one is voluntary and which of the 2 are involuntary. What are 2 differences between cardiac muscle and skeletal muscle? Well, one of them is that it's one's voluntary and one's involuntary. Then the cardiac muscle has intercalated disc. So that's in the video. I'm talking about it. So the cardiac muscle has intercalated disc. Skeletal muscle does not. The only question I'm going to ask you about nervous tissue is, I really didn't get into it. The 3 parts of a neuron. You know, what do they do? What do axons do, and what do dendrites do? There's 3 fibers that were found in connective tissue: elastic, collagen, reticular. You know, what do they do? So you should know out of the connective tissue, you should be able to name 3 or 4 types, right? Like blood, cartilage, bone, adipose tissue, tendons, ligaments, which are like dense. So you should be able to at least know what 3 of them are. And that's, I mean, you should have around 12 questions at this point between all 3 chapters.
Yeah, for the heart, you said that you really would like to know just how, like, the order of the blood, basically.
Last slide.
Okay.
All right, let me stop recording this part here, but if you got any questions, I'll stay on.